वल्लभ नारायण हे माधव हे केशव हे माधव हे केशव हे माधव हे केशव हे माधव हे केशव नारायण नारायण जानकी वल्लभ नारायण 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 हे माधव हे केशव हे माधव हे केशव हे माधव हे केशव हे माधव हे केशव नारायण नारायण जानकी वल्लभ नारायण 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 जानकी वल्लभ नारायण हे माधव हे केशव नारायण 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 जानकी वल्लभ नारायण जानकी वल्लभ नारायण जानकी वल्लभ नारायण जानकी वल्लभ नारायण सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः
खामेश दरवाजा बंद कर दो ना। Welcome to Satsang, everyone. Let's begin with a meditation. So wherever you are, just find a position that's comfortable for you. One in which you're straight and steady. Make a commitment that you're not going to move the body. So find a position you can actually be in for a few minutes. Allow the awareness to pull from the outer world to the inner world. Allow all of the focus, all of the attention to withdraw inwards. Inevitably in the outer world, there are always sounds, sensations, smells. But feel your attention pulling away from that world, like a piece of Velcro pulls off from the piece it's attached to. Literally feel that awareness pull from its attachment to the outer world into the inner world. Draw the awareness to the breath. Don't try to change the breath. Simply allow the awareness to merge with the breath. On each exhalation, as you exhale, feel that piece of Velcro freeing itself from all of that which binds it in the outer world. So feel yourself being freed, pulling away from all of the drama that we play, the masks that we wear, all of the identities that we wear in our lives, all of the ways that we identify ourselves. As you exhale, allow yourself to release and let it go. Release and let go of the history, of the personality, of all of these ways we identify. And allow yourself with each exhalation to sink deeper and deeper into the core of yourself. At the end of each exhalation, before you take the next inhalation, allow yourself to rest in that place in the center of the self, the core of the self. And as you exhale and drop into it, allow yourself to feel the spaciousness. Feel the freedom. Feel the silence. Keep the body still. The awareness on the breath. And allow yourself to exhale and really let go of all of that we're holding on to that holds us back. And feel yourself sinking, dropping, merging, melting into the source of the self. And as you drop into it, as the awareness merges with it, notice how that source, that core of the being seems to just expand and expand within you. Sink into that light. Sink into that love. Sink into that peace. Bring the hands gently together at chest level. And rub the palms of your hands gently against each other. Cup the palms of your hands over your closed eyes. Open your eyes and lower the hands. So, as always, we'll take a question that's come in advance and then open it up to any questions that anyone here has. I want to know the scriptures and the Vedas in depth, but it seems difficult and not for the common person. What is the simplest path to follow? So, fortunately for us, Arjuna asked Lord Krishna a very similar question, standing on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And in response to that question of, how do I know? How do I know the truth? How do I know the divine? How do I know all of this wisdom? What's the right way? What do I do? So Lord Krishna gave him, in response, the Bhagavad Gita, the song of God that he spoke to Arjuna standing on this battlefield of Kurukshetra. In the Gita we have 700 verses compared to volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes. That really is seen as the essence of all of the teachings. I've heard it said frequently that we know that Vedanta is literally Ved-ant. So the end, the distillation of the Vedas is Vedanta. Hence we have the Upanishads, which are seen really as the essence, the distillation of all of the Vedas. So we've gone from all of the Vedas into the Upanishads. But then I've heard it said that the essence of the Upanishads is given to us in the Bhagavad Gita. So we go from all of the Vedas, all of the different scriptures that we have, into the Upanishads. From the Upanishads, we come to the Bhagavad Gita. So in terms of the study of the scriptures, if you simply study the Gita, you've got 700 verses. Definitely manageable, definitely doable. But even so, within the Gita, and the Gita, by the way, is absolutely for common people. That's how the scriptures have been given to us, is for the common people. Hence they're given to us in stories. Take the Ramayana, take the Mahabharata. They're given to us as these beautiful epics, absolutely for the common people. This is not esoteric, complex, non-understandable by the masses scripture. This is story. It's a story with the teachings of how to live. But even if you don't want to go through all of the epics, which, by the way, I would recommend doing. I mean, they're exquisite. Read the Ramayana, read the Mahabharata. They're absolutely for common people. But you could also just take the Gita, 700 verses. But in the Gita also, when Arjuna asks this question, so Lord Krishna gives him basically 3 ways. 3 ways of knowing God, of attaining oneness with God, right? Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. So this path of wisdom, Jnana Yoga, path of devotion and love, Bhakti Yoga, path of action, Karma Yoga. And what's beautiful is as Lord Krishna is explaining each of these paths, as you're reading it, if you're reading it for the first time, you think, oh yeah, this is his favorite. So as he's talking about Jnana Yoga, you think, oh, okay, so he's advocating for Jnana Yoga, the path of wisdom. Study, learn, inquire, introspect. And then when he's talking about Bhakti Yoga, you think, oh yeah, okay, so this is really his favorite. The path of love, the path of devotion. And when he talks about Karma Yoga, the path of action, you think, this is the one. And when you've actually read the Gita in its entirety, ideally a few times, or at least with commentary a few times, and introspected on it many times, what you realize is he doesn't have a favorite. Each of them is his favorite in the way that if that's what you practice, that will get you to this oneness with God. Because as the questioner says, so I want to learn the Vedas and the scriptures. Well, the only reason to learn them of value is to know God. To know the self means to know God. If the only reason I want to learn them is so that I can recite them to other people and impress them, it's not a very high motivation. So we're not even going to go there. If you say, well, I just want to learn them so that everybody thinks I'm really smart. Well, okay, that's not the point. We won't go there. If we assume that the questioner wants to learn them for the real reason that we have the scriptures, which is not about an academic practice. It's not about memorizing them just so that you can recite them and make people say, wow, God, you're so smart. But actually, the point of the scriptures is to know the self, the capital S self, just to know God. So we then come to the Gita, to Lord Krishna's very clear instructions of how to know God, how to unite with God, how to attain, whether we say spiritual awakening, moksha, enlightenment, liberation, whatever our word for it is, doesn't matter. They're all going to the same place. So through wisdom, study the scriptures. But don't just study them as an academic exercise. Ask yourself, take one line, one shloka. How does this apply to me? How can I implement this in my life? Meditate on it. It's not about how much can I get through or how much can I memorize. It's about how can it change me. There's a great story of a young boy whose grandfather was very pious and read the Gita all the time. And so the boy decided, well, I also should read the Gita. You know, children, we always think that children will learn what we tell them, but actually children learn what we do. If you really want to teach kids, watch what you do much more than watch what you're telling them to do. Your children will grow and learn based on actually what they witness you doing, much more than what you instruct them to do. So this boy sees his grandfather studying the Gita, reading the Gita, decides he should also. One day he goes to his grandfather and he says, "Grandpa, I'm miserable, I'm useless." And the grandpa says, "What happened, beta?" He says, "Well, I'm trying to read the Gita, but I can't understand anything. And even if I understand a tiny little bit, I can't remember it. Go back the next day, I pick it up again, and it's like a brand new. Don't remember anything." So the grandfather says, "That's okay, just keep trying." A couple weeks go by, again the boy crawls in his grandfather's lap. He says, "Grandpa, I'm useless. Still, I can't remember anything. I don't understand it. I hate myself." The grandfather says, "All right, Cello, let's forget the Gita for a moment. Do me a favor. You see that coal basket that we have over there, that wicker basket that we use for carrying coal? Take that basket, go to the river, bring me a basket of water. I need a basket of water." So the boy thinks, great, this I can do. This is the perfect job for a young boy. Basket to the river, water, yes, I can do it. So he takes the basket, he goes to the river, he fills it up, he runs back to the house. But lo and behold, all of the water has, of course, come through the basket by the time he gets home. And his grandfather says, "What's this? I told you I wanted a basket of water. Go, run faster. Bring it before the water spills out." So the boy again runs, he fills it up, and he runs as fast as he can back. But of course, it's a basket, right? Water's all spilled through it. So the boy says, "Grandpa, can I take a bucket instead of this basket?" And the grandfather says, No, I told you, I don't want a bucket of water, I want a basket of water. Take this basket down and do it. So the boy does this several times, each time running faster and faster, trying to get back with a basket of water. But each time, by the time he gets home, all the water has already dripped out. So now he feels really horrible. And he gets in his grandfather's lap and he cries and he says, "Grandpa, I can't even do that. I can't even bring you a basket of water." And the grandfather says, "Beta, I knew you couldn't bring me a basket of water. Of course the water's going to spill through it. It's a loose weave basket. Of course all the water's going to fall out." He said, "But you tried very sincerely. You tried with full heart. And look at that basket now." He says, "What is different about the basket?" The boy looked over, and where the basket had been black to begin with, because it was the basket used to carry coal, now the basket was clean and beautiful. And the grandfather says, "You see, even in what you think are failed attempts to bring me this basket of water, that sincerity of trying has cleaned this basket so beautifully that it's like brand new." He said, so in the same way, your attempt to study the Gita, even you think it's a failed attempt, you think you can't learn anything, you think everything is spilling out of you like the water spilled out of the basket. But your sincere attempt to do so is actually transforming you. Like your attempt to bring the water in the basket transformed the basket. So keep reading, keep doing. So that's the path of Gyan Yoga, the path of wisdom, the path of study, the path of learning. But again, it's not about the memorization. It's about the sincerity of the attempt to understand, to integrate, to become one with it. And then, just as much as he loves Gyan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, path of devotion. Okay, so you're not much of a scripture reader. No problem. You're someone of love. Great. God loves to be loved. So have a path of devotion. Love God. In any way. Sing God's glories. Do puja. Write poems for God. Just love God. Quietly in your own heart. Loudly for all the world to hear. Either way. Doesn't matter. Just love God. Because when you love God, then as you move through the world, you're able to love God through all of those you meet. Because you see God everywhere. So he loves the path of devotion. Path of action. Well, even if our path is Gyan Yoga, wisdom, or our path is Bhakti Yoga, devotion, nonetheless, we still have to act. Reading is an act. Thinking is an act. Meditating is an act. Puja is an act. Singing is an act. Japa is an act. Everything is an action. Karma means action. We cannot live without acting. So Karma Yoga isn't really a path that you choose. It's sort of a path that has chosen all of us. You can't not be on a path of Karma Yoga because you have to act. And so either your actions are in alignment with yoga, with union, are in alignment with your spiritual practice, or they aren't. But you're still acting. And if you're on a spiritual path, why wouldn't you want your actions to be in alignment with that path? It makes no sense. So Karma Yoga is a path that has chosen us. And it's the path in which whatever I do, Karma Yoga doesn't just mean, oh yeah, Saturday mornings I, volunteer at the soup kitchen. It's a great thing to do. Do it. But you've also got Saturday afternoon and Saturday night and all day Sunday and all day Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. Karma Yoga is not about a few hours a week. It's about 24 hours a day. How do I live? How do I make every action one that is surrendered to God? How in every action do I say, not my will, God, thy will? How in every action do I surrender my ego? Surrender that false small s self at the altar of the truth of who I am. At the altar of the awareness that I'm here on earth for a different reason. And I surrender. That's Karma Yoga. That everything I do, whatever it may be, from cooking food to studying in school to driving my car in traffic to stuffing envelopes to whatever I'm doing, how do I do it as an offering to God? How do I do it with an awareness that it's not about my will, it's about your will? How do I every minute and every moment offer the prayer, oh God, let me get my ego out of the way. Not to trample it under my feet, not to take a pickaxe and slaughter it. Because I always say, try not to do too much inner battles, because at the end of the day, you've got to go to bed with the loser. It's all us. At the end of the day, when you lie down to go to sleep at night, that annihilated part of me is in my bed, not making for a very happy place to go to sleep. Just like if you have a fight with your spouse, right? Well, you always want to make sure not to go to bed angry. Well, in the same way, when you're having a battle inside, you don't want to think of it as a battle. I don't like to think of it as battles. I like to think of it as, oh God, let my ego get out of the way. Let there be enough space in me that even if this aspect of my ego still exists, I don't have to trample it, I don't have to kill it. Eventually it'll fizzle and dissolve on its own. But let me rather create enough space in myself that I can actually live in alignment with your will, not my will. So instead of being a slave to my ego, a slave to the small self that says, I want this. This is who I am. This is what I need. That I actually realize that's not who I am. That's not what I want. That's not what I need. And to actually just allow the flow of grace in so that I can experience the truth of who I really am. And that is ultimately when we speak of karma yoga, how everything, every action, every breath becomes yoga, union. And through that, we learn not just a memorization of certain shlokas or mantras, but we actually learn the scriptures in terms of the essence of the scriptures, the essence of the true self. And that experience of God. I know we have several other questions here, so I won't take any other questions that came in advance, and we'll open it up to the questions that are here. Yes.
Yes, thank you. When I'm in India, it's so nice on these wonderful places to feel the spirituality and this peace. And it's getting nearly always distracted by aggressive car or scooter drivers who's blowing the horn crazy. So my question is just very simple. Does these drivers build up negative karma for themselves?
So rather than think about the karma that the drivers of the scooters or the cars or the people making noise are going to get, instead of that, we always try to focus on, where is it about me? When we come into satsang, not just here in this room, but in general in our lives, there's so many places our minds can go about what's that one doing, what's this one doing, what that one's doing, how that one's talking, how that one's dressing, how that one's living, what that one's got, what this one. There's no end. And your whole life goes like that. And so this is where spiritually we focus not so much on them, but on my reaction to them. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to pretend they don't exist. It's hard to pretend that a motorcycle driver barreling down the road at 200 miles an hour honking his horn doesn't exist. But instead of focusing on, oh my God, I wonder what kind of karma he's getting, instead of that, we take the opportunity to focus on what it does within us. You know, it's funny, a lot of people come to me and say, I cannot meditate here. India is just too loud. I've gone up into the mountains, I've gone here, I've gone there, wherever you go. It's too loud. And whether it's loud from scooter noise or whether it's loud from big, beautiful spiritual programs that are taking place on loudspeakers and talking and singing, but in languages that people from abroad don't understand. Either way, it's people come and they're always saying, my God, there's just so much noise. And I'll ask them, well, so where are you from? And very frequently the answer is some very quiet place. I'm from Maine. I'm from the, countryside of England. I'm from places in the world that have got, 15 people per square kilometer type of populations. And I always say, now, you came to India looking for quiet? A country with 1.3 billion people in an area that's like a third the size of America? Seriously? Quiet? That's not what you come to India for. If you can't meditate in a place with 15 people per square kilometer, clearly the problem is not the outside noise. The noise that bothers us most, if we're really honest with ourselves, the noise that bothers us most in our meditations is not actually the outside noise, it's the inner noise. Because they sell these great things and they're really cheap. They're called earplugs. They sell headphones, right? I mean, for a couple of dollars, you can actually block out most of the outside noise. But interestingly, earplugs have never become the meditator's magic wand. If the problem were simply the noise outside, well, we'd have a world full of enlightened people for like 50 cents a pair. But interestingly, it's not the outside noise. It's the inner noise. And what India gives us is the opportunity to actually experience a noiselessness amidst the noise, a peace amidst the chaos, that if you can find it, if amidst the scooters and the loudspeakers and the bells going at all hours of the day and the night and the people up at all hours of the day and the night and all of the noise, if amidst that you can find noiselessness, you can find peace, then that is yours to take home. That is going back with you. And that's what we come to India for, is to find here in this sacred, holy place, in a place that of all the places in the world, energetically, this is the land, especially Rishikesh, the holy places, that have drawn the saints and the sages for thousands of years. I've never read a scripture that said, pilgrimage to Maine. Gotta get to Maine. The land of enlightenment. It's here. This isn't today. This is thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. This is where people were coming. There is something here. And therefore, when you're here, see if you can find it. And if you think it's impossible, spend some time on a busy road, busy highway, not just scooters, but cars, rickshaws, bullock carts, everything. And watch the cows. Now the cow is not a stupid animal. The cow is actually a very smart animal. Forget that in India she's considered holy. We won't even go there. Let's just call her a very intelligent creature. That cow naps. Not just in a room overlooking a busy street, but in the middle of the busy street. Her ears function fine. Her nervous system functions fine. But this cow has the ability. She knows I'm holy, they're not going to hit me. Talk about bad karma, right? They may not get it for the noise that disturbs your sleep, but they are definitely getting it if they hit a cow, and everyone knows it. So that cow knows no one is touching me. And in that space of security, knowing that I'm physically safe, she can nap amidst what probably are the loudest roads in the world. And I mention that because, to me, that's why the cow is holy. I know all the other reasons we worship her, but for me, as someone not born a Hindu, not born someone into a family where I was raised with this sense of all of what the cow does and gives us, for me, if I'm going to actually worship a cow, more so than I would worship any other animal, it's because she has figured something out. She has attained something that I want. And so when you're here, if you think it's impossible, just watch that cow. And ask yourself, really? I'm that much less than a cow? Possible for her, not for me? What is it she's got that I don't have? It's a great thing to meditate on. And see whether you can find that, even just for a moment, that place of noiselessness, that place of peace, because that's going to go home with you much more than the outer quiet of a physical location. Because you can't take that. But you can take what you find inside. Before that, I'll take you. We did yours last night. Yes.
My question is, recently UN has done a survey on happiness in the happiest countries in the world. The survey was conducted in 156 countries.
Yes.
Where Finland was number 1 and India stood in 140th number. So my question is, we are a spiritual country, we consider to be a spiritual country. What has gone wrong somehow? I mean, that is one of that honking drivers and all that.
Yeah.
So a country of 130 million. A country which has got a 5,000 years old history of spirituality.
Yes.
Where
What's happening to us? Yes.
What is happening to us? Where are we going?
Okay. So,
Even Pakistan was 67 on the
so there's a couple of things to think about. I'm going to share a different study with you, but then we'll talk also about what's gone on. Different study was conducted, which was actually one of the several studies that I had used in writing my dissertation. It was a study that was conducted of homeless people. And they compared 3 populations of homeless people. People who were homeless in Fresno, California. People who were homeless in Washington State. The researchers were from America, so they chose 2 US cities, Fresno, California, a city in Washington State, I forget the name of the city, but in the state of Washington, and in Calcutta, India. And they compared these people on a lot of different levels. Ultimately, the study was about happiness. Same thing you're talking about. And what they found was that people in Washington State actually had the most facilities because they were actually living, there was sort of a homeless village that had been put together and people actually were given a place to live. They even had access to things like bicycles, and there were all sorts of amenities and facilities that they were given. The people on the streets of Fresno, California had no such facilities like that, But they did have access to shelters, they had access to soup kitchens, they had access to a variety of different government-provided necessities for homeless people. The people in Calcutta had access to the least. So number 1 was those in Washington, number 2 were those in Fresno, number 3 were those on the streets of Calcutta, who basically had access to almost nothing, as we know. Interestingly, on self-rated levels of poverty, so how poor are you? The people of Calcutta rated themselves the highest. In their mind, even though they were living on the streets, had access to nothing compared to their counterparts in America, compared to those other counterparts, they were actually rating themselves as wealthier on the scales that they were given. Similarly, on the happiness scale, the people on the streets of Calcutta were self-described, and I'm forgetting now, I finished the dissertation many, many years ago. I'm forgetting now what it was, a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 or something, where they say rate yourself, or 1 is not happy at all, 5 is ecstatic, or 10 is ecstatic, and they have to choose. Their self-rated levels of happiness were higher, and their self-rated levels of poverty were also lower, meaning they rated themselves as less poor. So if someone says to you, are you much poorer than others, somewhat poorer than others, richer than others, right? They actually rated themselves as better off than these 2 groups in America. Different study, different outcomes, but ultimately the same thing that's being looked at is levels of happiness. Now, difficulties come, of course, in how we measure happiness. What we know is, number 1, we know that being very, very poor, not having access to food to eat, not having access to medical care, not having access to education, not having a roof over your head, these are things that are directly linked to unhappiness. I mean, all 3 of these groups were unhappy. It wasn't that the people on the streets of Calcutta were happy. It was just that they were happier than the people in Washington or Fresno. Being poor on that level is absolutely linked to unhappiness. So when you look at a percentage of the country that is living below poverty lines, India is going to have a much higher percentage than Finland. You've got a lot more people in India who don't have access to clean water, who don't have access to food, who don't have access to primary education or primary health care than you do in Finland. We're getting better. Things are happening. But the fact that such an enormous percentage of India's population lives cut off from the grid, it takes a while for things to change. So when you've got a percentage of the population that is living in that level of dire poverty, absolutely you're going to have much higher levels of unhappiness. This we know. What we also know about happiness, though, is that once your needs are met, once you have a roof over your head and you know where your meals are coming from and you have access to health care and education and you're at that level, that increasing levels of wealth, increasing levels of access to things is not actually correlated with increased levels of happiness. So you absolutely need to at least have that level of being comfortable. You have to be taken care of. You have to know that when the winter comes, there's going to be money for sweaters. That if you got laid off tomorrow, your family's not going to starve the day after. Because that creates stress. And stress creates unhappiness. So you have to be at least comfortable enough that there isn't that level of stress of where's the meal going to come from, where's the house going to come from, where are the clothes going to come from, where's the medicine going to come from. But there's another aspect that you've touched upon, which is where have we gone wrong from our culture? And this is a really important aspect with Indian Sanskriti, our culture. People who have access, and this is the other end. So you've got those who don't have anything. Inevitably, they're going to be unhappy. But then you come to the other end of the spectrum here. People who actually do have. Why are they not happy? And this is where your question about losing the culture comes. Because we've actually let go of the source of our happiness, which is connection and grounding. And we've sacrificed it on the altar of financial prosperity, on getting ahead. We have let ourselves be hypnotized into believing that everything white and foreign is better than everything dark and Indian. It's a horrendous tragedy in this nation, and it's something that breaks my heart every time I see it. And if you doubt it, just look at the sales of fairness creams. Pick up a newspaper and read the matrimonials and see if you can find one ad that doesn't say fair-skinned beauty. And then tell me whether every single one of those girls is actually fair-skinned. And if not, why do they have to say it? Why is it that we have taken this poison into us, into our genes? We've created a situation where we can never be happy. Because that which actually is the source of my happiness is that which I'm pushing away in favor of something that is basically empty. Which is why, interestingly, so many people from the West are coming to India. Because they're coming from a land where everything is there, but where what we don't have there is a connection to a culture, a Sanskriti, that is so deep, that is so timeless, that is one that connects us so deeply to the divine, to the creation, to each other, to the truth of ourselves. That's why we're all coming from the West to here. And Indians are all like, "Jara kisi tarah se mere liye, matlab America mein kuch kara do." Now you think, so why are we miserable? We've pushed away the source of our happiness, the source of our connection. When India realizes that its Indianness, its culture, its heritage, its roots, is actually the source of its happiness, not fairness creams, not jobs abroad, not a new pair of blue jeans, and actually works to bring that culture into today. Tragically, today you talk to the youth, and in their mind, that culture is backwards. And when we speak about people in the village, we refer to them as sort of they're backwards. We're somehow forwards because we've left all that behind. We're no longer vegetarians. We drink alcohol. We wear jeans. Look how sophisticated we are. And then we wonder, ki hua kya? Kya khoge? In this drive to somehow become some very, very, very warped vision of forward and sophisticated, that actually is simply a detriment to the earth, addicted and numbed. We've let go of our own roots. So yeah, we're going to be unhappy on both ends. The people on the end, because they don't have water, have a reason to be unhappy. And we have to work for them. We have to work to bring them up. But the people over here who are unhappy because they're watching things on TV, they're seeing things in movies, they're seeing them in magazines, they're seeing them on commercials, and they've decided, I need to be like that. I need to look like that. They've identified. There's a whole, I won't go into it here, but there's a whole psychological concept of identification with the perpetrator. And this is what's happened here. We've absolutely identified with those who would tell us that we are less than. And it's tragic. And it's something that's getting passed down, because there's very, very few people who are alive today who were old enough under colonialism that they actually kind of remember what they were taught in school and remember all of that. There's not that many people who were on both ends. Those who are miserable, interestingly, we've passed it down in like a cultural genetic consciousness. It's one thing 70 years ago, it's a totally different thing today. And this is where it's so important for Indians to stop thinking like that and to realize our wealth is our culture, is our heritage. It's not backwards, it's forwards. It's timeless. Sure, there are social norms which we need to change, like defecating outside. But that's not the culture. That was just a social norm of a certain time and place. That has nothing to do when we talk about Bharatiya Sanskriti. That Sanskriti, that is our wealth. And that wealth is the source of our happiness. This is why Puja Swamiji always says, don't worry about giving your children cars, give them sanskars. Because that's actually what they need in their lives. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. We'll take yours next time. We're at the time that we need to bring satsang to a close this evening. There will not be satsang for the next 2 nights. Tomorrow, 25th, and day after, 26th. We will not have satsang those 2 nights. We will start again on the 27th, which is Monday. Is that right? So Saturday and Sunday, no satsangs. I will be in Bangalore. And we will be back together on Monday the 27th. So have a beautiful couple of days.